Welcome back. He's the man proposing to make your children stay at school for 10 hours a day, a subject that got you all talking last week when we discussed it on our show.
We had 18,700 comments on that story alone, and since then, Education Secretary Micheal Gove has hit the headlines once again with his views on disciplining our children by forcing them to mop floors and pick up litter in the playground. Is he right? And he joins us now. We've had lots of ministers, former ministers, past ministers, ex-ministers who've been here who when they get the job, they think, oh my God, I've got Home Office, oh I've got Northern Ireland, oh I've got education. So when you got this, what are your education qualifications?
I'm a parent. I've been passionate about education, both as a journalist, which was my old job. I used to write about it, investigate what was going on. And then one of the reasons why I went into politics is that I thought, having been a journalist, having spent my time on the sidelines, commenting, occasionally being a bit flip and cynical, it was time to grow up. It was time to make a contribution.
So did you want education?
Yes, I did. When I became an MP, David Cameron was the leader of the Conservative Party, just been elected. I explained to him that there were all sorts of things I was interested in, but my passion was education because, as well as being a dad, the other thing is my life was transformed by education as well. My mum and dad weren't particularly wealthy, but I was very lucky. They scraped everything together to send me to an independent school at the age of 11. Then later on, my dad's business got hit, but I was rescued by that school. They gave me a scholarship which enabled me to stay on at the school, and I would never have had the opportunities that I had if it hadn't been for great teachers. Teachers changed my life.
Can I ask you a question then? If you say that your sort of qualification for doing this is being a parent, then surely as a parent, your sort of child's well-being is the most important thing to you. Everybody would agree on that. So this sort of 10-hour schooling day, my worry as a parent, same as you, is that this is going to have a huge impact on that family time. It's going to have a huge impact on their well-being. They're going to be utterly exhausted. That actually school and education becomes the main sort of part of their life.
I don't think so. I mean, it would still be the case that more than half the time children would be free, capable of spending time with their parents, playing.
When?
But it's also the case...
If they get home at 6.
Which half of the time is that?
Well, all of the weekends after they've come home at 5:30 or 6, but critically, what we want them to do at school is not to spend their entire time with their heads down in serried ranks doing traditional lessons. We'd like, ideally, lessons to stop maybe about sort of 2-ish, 3-ish, and then extracurricular activities. One of the things that private schools do, and do very well, is they make sure that there's competitive sports or dance or debating or drama. And that means that you get a fully rounded education, as well as the 3 R's that you need in order to get a good job. You get the sorts of things that build character. And what I really want to do is to try to make sure that children from poorer homes, whose parents can't afford private schools, get an education every bit as good. And also, I think it helps mums and dads to balance work and childcare as well, because there are lots of working parents, I think, who would appreciate the knowledge that their children were doing something purposeful after school.
Mary Bastard, the General Secretary of the Association of Teachers and Lecturers, says there is no evidence that extending the school day would raise exam results or help children achieve more at school. Children would just end up tired.
Well, what are children going to do if they're not doing something which is purposeful and creative, whether it's being involved in the school orchestra or the school football team or debating practice? But in many cases, the reality of working family life now is that mum and dad won't be there at the school gate at 3:30. They'll be working as well. And it's a good idea, I think, for the state and for schools to make sure that there are those sorts of activities that can keep children engaged and make their lives more fulfilled. More than that, there is actually a wee bit of evidence, quite powerful evidence actually, that those schools where children spend longer in school doing a range of activities are schools that get great results. Just down the road from here in Brixton is one of the best primaries in the country, and they achieve their great results with the longer day.
Fair enough. So that's from the children's point of view. There you are. You've made your point there. From what about the people that have to stay in school and teach them? Angela says, as a teacher, I'm at school at 7 a.m. Very rare I leave before 6 p.m. I then take work home, spend a large period of the night marking. Weekends are also tied up doing schoolwork, and I honestly say that out of the 6 weeks holidays I work at least 4. If kids are at school till 6, what time will I get home?
Well, I think it's important that we all recognise how hard teachers work. It can sometimes be the case that when people look superficially at the school day, they think teachers have it easy. It's the most difficult job in Britain today.
And you're about to make it harder for them?
Well, what we believe is that we need to make sure that there are other people who help teachers to do this, so that we bring in sporting coaches, or we bring in people who've got expertise, for example, in drama and music.
All of these things, because it's lovely having these ideas, and I actually think probably it's good to aim big.
Yeah.
But how are you going to pay for it?
Well, we've, the Chancellor of the Exchequer and I have made sure that we've protected education spending. You know, there have been some tough cuts elsewhere, but school spending's been protected. We've actually spent more money on educating the very poorest children. And one of the things I've said to teachers is, let me know what the additional resources are. Let's not quibble about whether or not it's a good thing. We all know that children will benefit from, as you say, from this extra range of activities, which it's good to aim for. And I want teachers to tell me what the resources are that they need, so that I can say to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, let's make sure we fund it properly.
But you have cut funding in schools. It's already cut. You've cut funding for 18-year-olds' education by 17.5%.
Well, overall, school spending has been protected from the ages of 5 to 16.
That bit.
Well, that's I mean, it's a delicate point, but post-16 doesn't come under the protection, because children have to stay in school to the age of 16, now 17. That's protected. Funding for 18-year-olds, yes, it has been hit, as indeed, you know, university funding has had to take a hit with tuition fees as well. But core schools funding has been protected, and we've also spent £2.5 billion more on the very poorest students.
Protecting it, one thing, to stand still.
Yeah.
It has to have, it's sensible. I mean, you can't possibly do these grand plans without there being huge investment, and that's where. And also, I'm assuming that if you want to maintain the standards that you say exist in the private school system, then you have to lower the class sizes, and if you lower the class sizes, you've got to have more schools.
Well, at the moment, we are building significantly more schools. I mean, I think comparisons between this government and last government can often sound like sort of a bit partisan, but it is the case we are spending much more money on new school buildings. It's also the case that we're recruiting more teachers. It's also the case that teachers are better qualified than ever before, and that's as a result of that investment. Now, that has meant that there have been some parts of the budget that have had to take the strain. But if you look overall at the amount that we've been spending on schools, school buildings, and investment in getting additional teachers in, then we've protected the sort of core, and then we've added money to those areas which have been let down in the past, where the most disadvantaged children live.
I've got a question here from Amanda. She said, I'd be interested to hear how this new discipline framework will be developed to give teachers more support and power to enforce his punishments. What backup will he provide when a 6-foot non-compliant teenager is using a mop as a weapon?
Well, I think if we've got to the stage where that teenager is using a mop as a weapon, then the only thing to do is to make sure that that child is excluded. And that means that the child goes into the type of specialist unit that deals with ultra-disruptive children.
But then are you just not... I mean, aren't you then just pushing all the bad kids into an area and go, well, don't look over there, don't look over here, they're all nice, they're doing after-school clubs, aren't they? Lovely in debating society. Don't look at the bad kid with a mop. Well, you can't really do that.
But in a well-run school, you won't reach a situation where you've got a mop-wielding 14-year-old running amok. You will have dealt with the problem beforehand. The best-run schools, both primary and secondary, have an escalating range of sections, so you nip these problems in the bud, and you don't get that sort of chaos. The truth is that school discipline overall is improving. More and more schools have good or outstanding behaviour, but it's still the case that 1 in 3 teachers say that they need additional help and support in order to keep discipline. So what we have are just a range of sanctions. I think if you step out of line in a relatively small way, then I think that one of the heavier punishments, like exclusion, would be totally disproportionate. But if you've got someone who is a persistent offender, who doesn't take his or her medicine, then ultimately the sanction of removing them from the school so that everyone else can get on with learning, and then making sure that the child is dealt with, is necessary. Some schools, of course, don't take the child off site. What they do is they make sure that that person loses privileges, spends time in what's called an inclusion unit within the school.
You're going to bring back lines?
Well, teachers have the chance to use lines or to get people to write essays at the moment, but I think it's a very, very good thing.
Well, there was a lot made
when
of
people
that,
are in detention, they do it.
Picking up litter, and we were never asked by government to pick up litter at school. If the teacher saw a bit of litter floating around, he would say, "You boy, pick that up," and that was sort of that. So what do they do to discipline now if they don't do lines and pick up litter?
Well, one of the things that teachers said to us is that there's a degree of uncertainty, and sometimes we get challenged when we impose authority, and we didn't want there to be any ambiguity. We wanted teachers to know the government was behind them, because we've all seen stories sometimes in the press of teachers who have taken steps to impose discipline, and then sometimes they've found themselves on the receiving end of a complaint, you know, "Sir, touch me," and all the rest of it. That's wrong. We've said, you know, among other things, you shouldn't have a no-touch culture in schools. If you need to separate two kids who are going at it hammer and tongs, if you need to restrain someone who's misbehaving, you should know that we stand behind you. And we've changed the law in order to make teachers feel more confident. But of course, what you need to do is right at the very beginning deal with poor behaviour by making sure that that children understand that there's a set of clear expectations, and also, critically, that parents know as well that they have a responsibility to ensure that their children behave too.
Well, that's a question that's come in from Laura Greenway, who says, I thought we sent our children to school to get an education. I don't think it's a teacher's job to discipline our children. That should be up to the parents.
Well, it's both. It's not either or. I think that teachers can be helped enormously if parents make sure that their children turn up on time, wearing proper uniform, with their homework ready. And one of the things which has been controversial recently is the fact that there have been some people who've tried to take their children out of school in order to go on holiday and take advantage of cheaper rates, and they've been fined, and some people have said that's unfair. It's unfair on the children to take them out of school, and it sends the wrong message about playing by the rules. And I think that schools now have the flexibility to change holiday dates so people can take advantage of off-peak offers. What you should not be doing as a parent is sanctioning your child flouting these rules.
How much discussion have you had with the teachers here? There are many accusations floating around that they haven't been consulted, that you muck about with stuff, you change the curriculum willy-nilly, they don't know where they are.
Yeah.
How much consultation have you had with them?
Well, we bring teachers into the Department for Education daily in order to consult them about what we should do, and I've appointed teachers to run key parts of the department. So when we're talking about discipline, one of the people that I appointed to review how we support teachers was a teacher himself, a head teacher called Charlie Taylor. He's written 2 brilliant books for parents on how to get good behaviour out of your children. He produced a discipline checklist for us. He's now in charge of teacher training across the whole country to make sure that the next generation of teachers know all the tricks of the trade in order to keep children in line.
And how are you going to get the unions back on side? Because it doesn't seem like they are at the moment.
Well, some of the union leaders, you know, will have a go whoever Education Secretary is. You know, if the Archangel Gabriel were the Education Secretary, they'd probably say that his raiment was too shiny. You know, they'll find a reason to object come what may. That's part of their job. But the majority of teachers are actually up for the sorts of changes that we're making. I was visiting schools in Cheshire and the Wirral on Friday. What was great was the enthusiasm the teachers had for the new curriculum that we're bringing in, the welcome that they were giving to some of the other changes that we were making in order to make sure that they could keep order in the classroom as well.
Well, it's certainly not universally loved, but I mean, it's just leave on one note here. As a parent, and my girls have grown up now, when those girls come home, or your children come home at the end of a very busy day, which if, as you propose, will be very long and finish quite late at 6 o'clock, can you guarantee, do you guarantee that the schoolwork finishes then? That when they get home, there will be no homework?
Well, it's up to each individual school, but one of the benefits of a longer school day is you can do what independent schools do, and you can have supervised homework, prep, as they call it, in the school. One of the big advantages of that is that there are some homes where it's very difficult, actually, for a particular child to get the peace and quiet to do proper study. So I think allowing children to do homework in school helps.
They're doing that at school, so when your child comes home, they won't be given extra work.
Well, it's up to the individual head teacher, but I would hope that head teachers would recognise that if a child works hard and does their homework or prep conscientiously at school, then you shouldn't overburden them. You should give them time to relax and have fun.
And be children.
Be children, but also, you know, read the books that they might want to read in their own free time. One of the key things about, I think, some of the attitudes towards education that some people have in this country, I think it's diminishing now, is the idea that schoolwork and study is somehow boring and uncool and something that you want to avoid. The best schools make learning fun. Teachers and students work together. People enjoy being in the classroom. They're with their friends. And also, you know, learning opens a whole world of knowledge to you, which gives you the chance to achieve your dreams.
We're going to open a whole world of comment now. And thank you very much indeed. Let's see what you've got to say. Emma?
The comment counter has been flying out of the room, pretty much. KJ Berry said, I agree with disciplining children more at school, but making them do a 10-hour day is terrible. Most adults don't work 10 hours. They are kids and they need to have family time at home. Allegra Campbell said, mopping floors is a punishment. At my primary school, we were always expected to mop the floors after lunch. There was a cleaning rota and we'd do it in pairs when it was our time during that week. I can't believe this would even be perceived as a punishment. Zoe Louise said, schools are there to give children an education. Parents teach them life skills. And Natalie Chappell said, how is mopping floors and picking up litter a punishment? It's what self-respecting people living in tidy houses do every day, and kids should see it as normal, not a bad thing that only naughty people have to do. Keep your comments coming.
All right, thank you very much indeed. And we're back after the break.